Suddenly, while this girl was traveling on a plane with her friends, their pilot dies of a heart attack, leaving them wondering what to do. Unable to understand anything, the girl sits straight in the pilot's seat, tries to control the plane and somehow manages to save it from crashing, but they're still in danger because they are now over the middle of the ocean and the plane is completely out of fuel, so they brace themselves, assuming they will have to face death today and prepare for it, leaving everything to fate. So the story begins a few days earlier with this girl named Sarah. She is sitting in a bar on an island with her boyfriend Jackson. Relationship for a long time, Sarah loves Jackson a lot. At one point in their conversation, Jackson gets a call on his phone but does not take the call from his wife. Instead, he goes outside to talk. Actually, the call was made by another girl. Jackson doesn't want them to discuss anything about that girl. So he goes outside to receive the call, but still, they understand everything and it causes him much more pain. So, without saying anything, they leave him there and then time passes by a year and we see how they are doing. He is now headed to the airport living in London, and in the past year there has been no contact with Jackson. Both of them had broken up, after which they reached the stage where his friend's wedding they are now here to attend. Came here and last saw Jackson at this place. When he was talking to his girlfriend, then he sees Jackson on a boat with some people. He asks his girlfriend what Jackson is doing here. His girlfriend tells him there's a driving school here too, and tonight he will also join our party tonight. When there's a party of 20 people there, Sarah sees Jackson has come over, approaches Sarah and talks to her very nicely. Would not talk to her nicely. After a while, Jackson tells her he now has to leave. When Jackson leaves from there, aside from him start following and tell him, I'll take you to your cottage. Jackson refuses to proceed, but they didn't listen to any of his words. Then his girlfriend from behind tells him to come by 7:30 in the morning, we will leave early. Indeed, his girlfriend has been selected for marriage. After that, they suffer an incident with Jackson. Upon reaching there, they both start borrowing while being intoxicated. The two of them come very close to each other. They spend the whole night together when they wake up from sleep. By that time, it is already 8 o'clock in the morning, and in the meanwhile, the last boat there has also gone. Now they have to reach her friend's wedding, no matter what. For this, they call a friend who has a private plane that takes tourists from one place to another, and upon reaching there, they know that they must attend at the friend's house no matter what. His friend was a bit unwell, but he tells Sarah that I will get you there somehow. Then there at Jackson's, they have to go there because it is already very late, and they have to attend that wedding. Since Sir's girlfriend, Jackson's girlfriend, then both of them start their journey by sitting in the private plane and while going the pilot. Without saying, do you want to fly the plane? Hearing this, they become very happy and goes to sit on the seat beside him. Then she starts to set how to fly the plane. But slowly body starts to feel worse and eventually suffers a heart attack and dies there, and their friend sees this embodiment and gets very scared. He now says who will look at her. What has happened to Jackson? He checks her meanwhile because of all this. The stuff from the back starts to fall towards the front. A cylinder falls on top of the plane's compass as a result. The compass breaks, being left with no other choice. Starts flying the plane and with great difficulty stabilizes it, because his friend had told him a lot about flying a plane, and thus he is able to understand the plane. They have a radio in the plane. They had someone with them in the control room they could talk to. By speaking in the control room, they informed about the whole situation. The control room informed them about a location. It was said to reach there quickly, but the plane's compass, which was broken, so they couldn't find the location. And because of this, they were unable to reach there. In the same way they were keeping their plane afloat in the sky, suddenly they saw that a thick black cloud was in front of them, meaning they were about to fall into a huge storm. They have to go through this storm with their plane. At that moment, Jackson suddenly got an idea. He took out a magnet from a compass and placed it in a glass of alcohol. By doing this with the magnet, customers can get accurate directions. But the compass he made was ruined due to the storm. Strike after strike of lightning began to hit their plane, which caused their plane to become unbalanced. But they somehow managed to come out from the storm. Just then, an alarm starts ringing in their plane indicating a fuel leak. In fact, their plane began to leak fuel. If they do not fix this somehow, i.e. the fuel leak, if they don't shut it down, their plane will crash due to running out of fuel. Jackson decides he will go out and seal the place with tape where the fuel is leaking. Actually, the leak happened when lightning struck their plane. They forbade him to go out, but Jackson says if I don't go out, we will die anyway. Saying this, he ties a rope around his waist and ties the other end to a pin, then slowly goes outside. and tries to tape the leaking spot. After many attempts, he manages to seal it, stopping the fuel leak, but just as he is about to go back inside, his hand slips and he starts to fall from the plane. Meanwhile, seeing this, Chora becomes very scared and puts the plane in auto mode and goes to the back, and after much effort manages to get Jackson back up. But when Jackson's hand slips, he feels a lot of pain in his hand, and his hand starts to hurt badly. But still, I managed to seal that spot from where it was leaking. But when they check the fuel tank, they see there are very few flowers left, and it means the plane's fuel is about to end. If they can't do something now, the fuel will finish. Because the fuel is ending, their plane will get consumed there, so they decide to leave all their belongings, everything they will throw. Then the plane will be much lighter. For that reason, they start throwing every single item. Even Sarah's favorite friends' houses are forced to drop because anything must be exchanged to lighten the plane, which will reduce their fuel expenses to some extent. But a while later, it shows much less flowers with fuel. If they don't find a landing space before the fuel ends, then the plane will crash and both will die there anytime, which is why we only have one way open to us. We have alcohol we can pour into the fuel tank and we can reduce fuel costs. Sarah likes that idea, but to put alcohol in fuel tank one more time outside, when told I'll go out, they then restrict him and say, you have so much pain in your hand, you won't be able to go outside this job I have to do. But Jackson forbids it, right? But they had no other way. They risk their lives and go outside the train, and plane rises from where alcohol can be poured with a lot of difficulty. After managing to pour the alcohol, money with difficulty, but due to the high speed of the wind outside, it slips away, but still somehow he is able to get inside the plane. Seeing this, one becomes very happy because Sarah has worked with a lot of risk. Meanwhile, the fuel in the tank has increased, making flowers. For this reason, they both become quite happy, but again in the same way, as the plane flies, the flowers start to run out. If they do not find a place for a quick landing, then that plane will consume in the middle of that sea. Right then, Jackson sees an island in front of him, and seeing that, he becomes very happy and starts taking the plane towards that island. But when they reach there, they see there is no island. It was completely a reflection of water, what they thought was an island from above. And seeing this, they both become very disappointed. They assume that their plane will be consumed by this increase, and then he sees another island below, and this time he is seeing the water reflection, or actually an island. It was a bit far from them. They start taking the plane towards the island, but before reaching near the island, their plane eventually ends up getting swallowed by the water. Both of them get trapped inside the plane, which slowly starts sinking into the water. Meanwhile, Jackson faints. They try a lot to bring him back to consciousness, but in no way does Jackson regain consciousness. They realize that they have to get out of here somehow, so they try to open the plane's door, but due to the water's pressure, the door doesn't open at all. Still, they try with all their strength to open the door, and they are successful after that. He takes Jackson out and puts a life jacket on him and brings him up. But after coming up, he sees Jackson was still actually trapped in the plane even after putting on the life jacket. They go down again and bring Jackson up from the plane. Somehow they manage to get on top of the island. In the meantime, Jackson's consciousness returns, but they realize that they are still not completely safe. Actually, it's not on an island, but rather a place that looks like an island. When the water recedes, and the water, when high, it will be completely covered, so with rising water, they will sink again. They realize that their death is absolutely certain. Afterwards, it is seen.
Slowly, the water level begins to rise and fills up their spot.
Now the two are completely underwater, so no one will see them. And on top of that, they have only one life jacket, and it is now lying there while Jackson accepts his death. Jackson tells him to take my life jacket, but he refuses in any way, then says, when we are together, if we live, we will live together. And if we die, we will die together. And then Jackson is told that I love you so much that he understands that he too is nothing without her. In the moment of life and death, they love each other. Hugging for the last time, they realize how much they love each other as death becomes certain. Knowing they become utterly hopeless exactly then, they see a vote coming to them when they had communicated to the control room, which they knew. So they come here to save themselves, and then they lift Jackson Assad's body and save their lives. And our story ends right here today.